You may not realize it yet, but the exhaustion you feel is not the end of your strength. It is the beginning of your awakening. When a man loses the desire to keep going, it is never because he is weak. It is because he is standing at the doorway of a life he has not yet learned to enter. Think of how many battles you have fought alone. How many nights you pushed through when no one saw your effort. How often you rose even when your spirit whispered that it would be easier to let everything collapse. That kind of resilience does not disappear. It only falls silent under the weight of disappointment. What you call losing the desire is often nothing more than the soul refusing to continue a path beneath its potential. You are not resisting life. You are resisting a version of yourself that no longer fits who you are becoming. Your fatigue is not surrender. It is transformation demanding space. Look back at the promises you once made to yourself. Not the small ones, the sacred ones. The visions that stirred you, the goals that once lit your mind, the future that felt so close you could almost touch it. If those dreams still live in you, then desire has not died. It has only been buried beneath discouragement. Ask yourself why the desire feels faint now. Is it because you cannot reach what you want? Or because you have not yet decided to rise to the height your dream requires? A man loses energy when he forgets his purpose and regains it the moment he remembers why he began. There is a truth you must hear. The strongest men you admire all reach this same hour. The hour when the body obeys, but the heart hesitates. The hour when logic says to slow down, but destiny demands that you continue. What separated them from the crowd was not talent. It was refusal. Refusal to collapse when desire felt absent. Consider how close you may already be. A mind discouraged by yesterday cannot see how near tomorrow's victory lies. Some men quit when the ground becomes heavy. Unaware that one more push would reveal the treasure just beneath the surface, do not repeat their fate. The world does not test men at the beginning of their journey. It tests them inches before their breakthrough. The loss of desire is not an ending. It is the final pressure applied to those who are destined to rise above the average. If you feel tired of the climb, it means the summit is nearer than you think. Now think of the consequences of giving in, not just for you, but for everyone who silently depends on your rise, your future family, those who look to you for strength, and even the man you will become years from now. If you give in today, you do not merely lose progress, you lose the future version of yourself who was waiting for your arrival. Yet imagine the opposite. Imagine refusing to give in. Imagine choosing persistence when everything inside you begs for rest. Imagine discovering that your desire returns tenfold the moment you prove you can act without it. That is the turning point of every extraordinary life. You do not need motivation right now. You need direction. You need the steady inner command that says, I will not yield. Desire is a flame, but decision is the spark that reignites it. And once you make that decision, desire follows, courage returns, and strength rises from places you thought were empty. Listen closely. You are not at the end. You are at the threshold. And thresholds always feel like breaking points to those who do not understand them. What feels like the collapse of your desire is only the collapse of the limitations that once defined you. Hold on a little longer. Push once more. Refuse to give in. The man you are becoming is forged in exactly this hour, and no other hour could have shaped him. There comes an hour in every man's life when the flame that once drove him forward grows faint, not because his strength has vanished, but because his spirit is pressing against an inner boundary that no longer fits the stature of his growth. What feels like failure is often merely expansion demanding a larger field in which to move. A man does not lose desire because he is weak. He loses desire because the life he has tolerated no longer satisfies the deeper nature within him. The spirit becomes restless when confined to a purpose too small, and this restlessness expresses itself as fatigue, discouragement, and the strange heaviness that settles upon the mind before transformation begins. Most men misinterpret this inner pressure. They believe they are falling behind when they are actually outgrowing the limits that once held them. They confuse emotional exhaustion with true exhaustion, forgetting that a man can be weary in his heart while his strength remains untouched. The body bends only after the spirit yields, and it is the spirit that is calling for renewal now. There is a silence that comes over a man in such times, a silence not of death but of preparation. Desire may withdraw into the shadows, but it has not disappeared. It has merely retreated to make room for a greater force that wishes to emerge. You are not standing at the end. You are standing at the threshold, and thresholds always feel heavier than ordinary moments. Many men have walked this path before you. Abraham Lincoln endured months when desire deserted him completely, when his spirit felt broken beneath the weight of failure and loss. Yet from that very silence came the strength that later shaped a nation. Henry Ford knew long stretches of discouragement when his plans failed and his funds dwindled, yet he pressed forward because something silent within him refused to collapse. Andrew Carnegie faced seasons when desire dimmed under hardship, but he learned that desire is not the source of persistence. Purpose is. Discouragement is cunning. It disguises itself as reason, offering arguments that seem sound. Slow down, step back, turn away. But these arguments are the language of fear, not truth. When a man seeks growth, discouragement always arrives to test his seriousness. It whispers not because he is incapable, but because he is close to crossing into a life the timid part of him does not yet understand. This moment is not a wall, it is a threshold. The weight you feel is not the weight of failure, but the weight of doors preparing to open. A man must learn to recognize the difference between the end of desire and the pause before rebirth. When desire goes silent, the man must become still enough to hear the quieter voice beneath it, the voice of the deeper self calling him upward. Others may not understand this hour, but they will feel its impact. For when a man continues despite emptiness, those who watch him sense a rare strength. They may not speak it, but they see the steadiness in his bearing, the dignity in his endurance, the quiet confidence in his refusal to yield. People instinctively admire the man who acts with resolve, even when enthusiasm has departed. There is strength hidden within the simple act of one more hour. The man who gives one more hour when his desire is gone gains an advantage over those who quit at the first sign of fatigue. Nature reserves her greater rewards for the man who endures past the ordinary limit, for endurance reveals character more than desire ever could. Desire begins the journey, but endurance completes it. A man must learn to speak to himself when desire grows silent. He must declare inwardly, "My spirit is stronger than my mood. My purpose is greater than my discomfort. I continue because I have chosen to continue." Such affirmations are not mere words, they are commands issued to the subconscious, which responds not to emotion but to firm instruction. You must understand that losing the desire to continue is not a verdict. It is a message. It is the mind saying, "I can no longer remain the man I have been." It is the spirit saying, "I require a higher direction." It is life saying, "You have outgrown this stage, rise." The danger lies not in losing desire, but in assuming that the loss of desire means the loss of destiny. It does not. It never has. The greatest men in history reached this same bending point, where the desire to press forward faded, and the only thing that remained was decision. And it was decision, not desire, that carried them into greatness. The mind often confuses emotional fatigue with true depletion. When a man feels discouraged, he believes he cannot continue, yet he rises the next morning and works again. This proves that he has more strength than he realizes. The fatigue he feels is not a lack of power, but a lack of direction. Direction renews power, the way fuel renews a flame. Do not mistake the silence of desire for its death. Desire rests at times, the way the sun sinks beneath the horizon before rising again. The Spirit withdraws not to abandon you, but to gather strength for the next ascent. Every man who has ever risen has known these quiet intervals, where he felt suspended between what he has been and what he must become. This hour is sacred. Few recognize it. Fewer endure it. But the man who endures it becomes the man others later call extraordinary. Those around you may never know the depth of the battle you fought in silence, but they will see its result in the strength you carry afterward. Discouragement tries to persuade the man to step backward when he is inches from stepping forward. It arrives when the ground is hardest, when progress seems invisible, when the heart feels thin. Yet this timing is never accidental. Discouragement intensifies only when a breakthrough stands near. It is the final test given to the man who is about to rise. You must recognize this test for what it is, a spiritual examination of your resolve. If you retreat, the test returns later in harsher form. If you stand firm, the test dissolves and new strength rises from the very place where desire once collapsed. This is the law of inner strengthening. The spirit grows larger when the man refuses to diminish. When you continue despite emptiness, others see a steadiness in you that commands respect. They sense that your strength does not depend on moods or excitement. They begin to trust your character more than your words, for endurance is the highest proof a man can offer. Your task now is simple. Stand, just stand. Continue. Move forward without waiting to feel ready. Move forward without waiting for desire to return. The man who acts without desire builds a strength the ordinary man will never know. The man who depends on desire remains ruled by his emotions. The man who depends on decision gains authority over himself. Desire will return, but only after you have proven that you can continue without it. The Spirit rewards obedience. It rewards steadiness. It rewards endurance. Once you demonstrate that you are governed by purpose, not mood, desire reawakens with greater force than before. Speak to yourself with firmness. I do not collapse. I do not yield. I do not wait for feeling. I decide, and my spirit obeys. These affirmations are your anchor in this hour. Repeat them until they sink into the very foundation of your being. You are not falling behind. You are rising through a phase that every man must face before reaching the next level of life. You are undergoing the inward stretching required before outward expansion occurs. You are being shaped, strengthened, and prepared. This hour will define you, not because it feels powerful, but because it feels empty, and you continue anyway. That is the moment a man becomes the master of his destiny, and that is the hour you are living in now. There comes a moment when a man must understand that desire is not the beginning of progress. Decision is. A man who waits for desire to return before he moves condemns himself to inaction. For desire is a flickering flame, but decision is the spark that lights it. Most men wait for their emotions to push them forward, not realizing that emotions are servants, not masters, and they obey the man who commands them with unwavering purpose. When desire fades, a man believes he has reached the end of his strength, yet he has merely reached the end of his dependence on feeling. This is the point at which a man must learn the law of inner ignition, the principle that the will can summon power without waiting for emotion. The mind responds to command more powerfully than to mood, and when the will issues a decree, the subconscious begins to gather its forces in obedience. The danger lies in believing that enthusiasm must come first. Enthusiasm is a companion on the path, but it is not the leader. The leader is decision, spoken with authority from the center of your being. When a man decides with firmness, he awakens within himself a spark that grows into a flame. When he hesitates, the spark dies, and he falls back into the shadows of indecision. No man rises until he accepts that he must move before he feels ready. There is a profound difference between the man who waits for enthusiasm and the man who summons it. The man who waits is ruled by circumstance, governed by passing moods, shaped by the softness of habit. The man who summons enthusiasm becomes the master of his inner world. His strength does not depend on comfort, nor does his progress depend on inspiration. He commands himself to act, and action produces the enthusiasm he once thought he needed beforehand. Desire weakens when a man drifts without direction. When the mind lacks a central aim, it becomes weary from its own wandering. But desire strengthens when it is tied to purpose, and purpose strengthens when it is tied to decision. Therefore, the man who seeks to revive his inner fire must not chase after lost enthusiasm. He must choose a definite course and command himself to move toward it. Direction creates fuel, and fuel gives rise to flame. It is here that many men falter. They believe they must wait for the return of inspiration, when the truth is that inspiration returns only after motion begins. A man cannot think himself into renewal. He must act himself into renewal. The subconscious does not gather strength in stillness. It gathers strength in obedience. Every step taken in defiance of discouragement instructs the subconscious to awaken its reserves, and those reserves are far greater than the man ever imagined. Thomas Edison is a perfect example of this truth. During the countless experiments that failed to yield results, he did not depend on desire to carry him. He depended on decision. His resolve did not waver with each setback, for he understood that the mind must be commanded, not negotiated with. He issued his will with firmness, and the subconscious obeyed that will by producing endurance through thousands of disappointments. It was not desire that kept him going. It was an absolute refusal to stop. Charles Schwab cultivated boldness in the same manner. He did not wait for confidence to arrive before he stepped forward. He stepped forward and through that action taught his subconscious that boldness was now the standard of his identity. Men around him sensed this inner firmness, and they responded to it with trust. Those who observed him believed he possessed some unusual gift, yet the truth was simple. He chose boldness before he felt bold. He commanded courage, and courage arose. Decision is the original source of energy. When a man decides with finality, the mind ceases its inner conflict, and the energy once drained by hesitation becomes available for action. The man who wavers loses strength, but the man who decides becomes strong because he has unified the forces of his spirit. Half of a man's fatigue comes not from labor, but from internal contradiction. Decision removes contradiction and releases power. The process of awakening one's dormant courage begins with a single inward decree. You must speak to yourself with the authority of a commander addressing his troops. Say within yourself, I move whether I feel desire or not. I advance because I have chosen to advance. These words, repeated with firmness, reshape the subconscious. The more often you declare them, the more quickly your inner strength awakens. When others observe a man who acts without waiting for mood or motivation, they recognize something rare. They see a man governed by principle, not by emotion. They see a man whose will stands above his circumstances, a man who advances even when ordinary men fall back. Such a man earns respect without seeking it, for his conduct speaks louder than his words. He gains an aura of certainty that others instinctively trust. This is the hour in which you must choose whether you will be ruled by desire or by discipline. The man ruled by desire moves only when the flame is strong. The man ruled by discipline moves even when the flame is weak, and through that movement the flame returns. Discipline is the hammer that shapes identity. Desire comes and goes, but discipline remains. When the mind is trained to obey the will, desire becomes a servant rather than a master. You must understand that desire is a luxury, but decision is a necessity. A man cannot live by desire alone, for desire is fleeting. But a man can live by decision, for decision gives birth to action, and action gives birth to belief, and belief gives birth to desire. This is the cycle of inner ignition. Most men wait for desire to begin the cycle. The wise man begins the cycle through decision. Speak into your own mind. I summon strength. I summon clarity. I summon endurance. These affirmations are not wishful sentences. They are commands. The subconscious does not distinguish between reality and command. It responds to the tone of authority. The tone you use determines the strength you awaken. A weak tone awakens weakness. A strong tone awakens power. The truth you must accept is this: the spark you seek is already within you. It is not lost. It is dormant. It ignites the moment you take action without waiting for feeling. It ignites when you command yourself to rise. It ignites when you choose to continue even when your heart whispers otherwise. You are not waiting for desire. Desire is waiting for you. You stand now at the gateway of your own renewed strength. If you command yourself to move, the next year will obey your direction. If you wait for desire, you will remain where you are. The choice is simple, but its consequences echo through every day that follows. Act now. Decide now. Command now. Say within yourself, I am the master of my mind. I am the author of my strength. I act. I advance. I rise. And through these words spoken with conviction, you will feel the spark of decision grow into the flame of desire once more. There comes a time in every man's life when he must confront a truth he has long avoided. Desire collapses not because the man is weak, but because the aim he serves is too small for the strength hidden within him. A man cannot remain inspired by a direction that does not stretch him. He cannot feel alive while pursuing an aim unworthy of the size of his spirit. And though he may not speak it aloud, he knows within himself when his purpose has grown too small, when his tasks no longer challenge him, and when his days no longer call forth his full measure of ability. A man's soul rebels against trivial pursuits. It grows restless when unchallenged. It withdraws when confined to duties beneath its potential. And when the soul withdraws, desire fades. This is why the man who has lost his desire to keep going must not merely rest or retreat. He must examine the aim he is serving. If the aim is too small, he must release it. If the aim is not worthy of his strength, he must replace it. The collapse of desire is often the soul's way of demanding something greater. You must understand this profound truth. The spirit refuses to devote itself to what does not require its full strength. A goal that asks little of you will give little to you. A direction that does not require your courage will not awaken your courage. And if you are serving an aim that does not stir your imagination, sharpen your will, or call forth your deeper powers, then your desire will decline not because you are unworthy, but because your aim is unworthy. This is why men of great achievement always chose aims that were larger than themselves. Andrew Carnegie's resolve took shape in his youth when he declared that he would rise above the limitations of his circumstances and devote himself to a mission that demanded the utmost of his ability. That aim was not small, and because it was not small, it made him powerful. His spirit rose to meet the height of the task he had chosen. John D. Rockefeller's perseverance was born of purpose. He did not wake each morning wondering whether he felt strong or inspired. He woke with the knowledge that he had devoted himself to a purpose that demanded consistency and excellence. His desire did not fluctuate with his emotions because his aim was too great to be influenced by passing moods. Even Abraham Lincoln's enduring strength came from a purpose larger than personal gain. He suffered reversals that would have broken lesser men, yet he continued because his aim called for endurance. His purpose was not about himself. It was about the destiny of a nation. A man who shoulders a large purpose becomes larger because of it. If your desire has faded, you must ask yourself, Is my aim too small? For the spirit does not tire of greatness. It only tires of mediocrity. It does not grow weary of challenge. It grows weary of stagnation. It does not lose interest in growth. It loses interest in repetition without advancement. The aim you choose for your life must be large enough to awaken your imagination and firm enough to guide your decisions. It must demand something from you, something real, something difficult, something meaningful. A man who chooses an aim too easily reached will soon lose interest in reaching it, but the man who chooses an aim that stretches him becomes renewed by the very pursuit of it. A powerful aim restores energy the moment it is chosen. It brings clarity to the mind. It strengthens the will. It directs the attention. And it revives desire even before action begins. When a man ties himself to a great direction, his steps become lighter, his mind becomes sharper, and his spirit becomes steadier. The aim itself becomes the engine that drives him forward. But a man cannot form this aim thoughtlessly. He must form it with seriousness and inner honesty. He must ask himself not what will impress others, but what will make him worthy in his own eyes. He must choose a direction that resonates with the deeper part of him, the part that knows he was created for more than drifting through life without purpose. You must search your own thought and discover the aim that stirs your spirit, not the aim that merely satisfies your comfort. The path you choose should demand the fullest expression of your abilities. It should demand discipline, improvement, courage, and faith. A small aim weakens a man because it allows him to remain small. A great aim strengthens a man because it forces him to grow. Once you have chosen a greater aim, you will notice that desire, which once seemed dead, begins to rise again. It rises because it has something to attach itself to. Desire is a flame. A powerful aim is the oil that sustains it. Without a worthy aim, desire flickers. With a worthy aim, desire becomes a controlled fire capable of enduring storms and setbacks. When a man aligns himself with a greater aim, discouragement loses much of its influence. The obstacles that once disheartened him now appear as stepping stones. The delays that once frustrated him now act as instructors. The doubts that once weakened him now sharpen his resolve. The man becomes fortified because the aim he serves fortifies him. There is a spiritual magnetism created by a clear and powerful aim. The world begins to rearrange itself around a man of purpose. Opportunities are drawn to him, allies are drawn to him, ideas are drawn to him. Even adversaries respect the steadiness of his direction. A man who walks with purpose walks with power. Moreover, others begin to admire the man who lives by direction rather than reaction. They see in him something firm, something settled, something grounded. They sense that he is not governed by mood, but by intention. They watch him advance step by step and wonder how he continues despite challenges. They attribute this to luck or talent, never realizing that it is simply the fruit of having chosen a worthy aim. A man of purpose stands apart because he carries within him an internal compass that cannot be shaken. He knows where he is going, and because he knows where he is going, he does not need constant encouragement. His direction gives him strength. But even the greatest aim must be repeated to the mind until it becomes a living force. Repetition breathes life into purpose. Repetition engraves direction into the subconscious. Repetition transforms a chosen aim into a commanding aim. Say within yourself each morning, "My purpose is clear. My path is chosen. My aim guides my thought, my actions, and my life." Speak it until you believe it. Believe it until you act it. Act it until you embody it. This repetition does not weaken the message. It strengthens it. Every great man repeated his aim to himself with such consistency that his mind became incapable of betraying it. Carnegie did it. Rockefeller did it. Lincoln did it. Their aims became part of their identity, and identity governs conduct far more effectively than emotion ever could. You must also understand that a great aim does not require you to feel ready. It requires only that you be willing, willing to advance, willing to withstand discouragement, willing to persist through slow hours and dark days, willing to hold to your direction even when your desire wavers. Desire is the reward of alignment. When you align your life with a purpose worthy of your spirit, desire returns, not as a fleeting emotion, but as a steady undercurrent of conviction. And conviction is a far stronger force than enthusiasm. When you choose your aim, let it be one that reflects the man you intend to become. Let it be an aim that demands courage. Let it be an aim that demands discipline. Let it be an aim that demands the highest within you. For a man's aim is not merely a target, it is a mirror. It shows him who he is, and it shows him who he must become. This is why you cannot choose an aim that is beneath your ability. It will not hold your attention. It will not stir your passion. It will not summon your strength, but choose an aim that calls you upward, and you will feel your energy rise with it. Now take this truth into your heart. You have not lost desire. You have outgrown your old aim. Desire dies only when purpose dies, and purpose dies only when it is too small for the man carrying it. Choose a new aim, a greater aim, a worthy aim, and desire will return to serve you. There comes a point in every man's struggle when he must learn the difference between acting with desire and acting with discipline. Desire is a welcome companion when it is present, but it is undependable. It rises with triumph, fades in difficulty, and disappears entirely in the quiet hours when the path grows long. Discipline, however, is the steadfast servant of all who have risen above the common level. Where desire flickers, discipline burns steadily. Where desire hesitates, discipline pushes forward. And where desire collapses, discipline keeps the man upright until the flame returns. A man must understand that progress does not belong to the inspired, it belongs to the consistent. The man who moves in small steps each day surpasses the man who waits for bursts of passion. 1 hour of disciplined effort outweighs a day of unfocused enthusiasm. You cannot build a great life on the unstable foundation of mood. You must build it on the solid stone of deliberate action, action carried out even when the spirit whispers of weariness. The law of forward motion is one of the most overlooked truths in human advancement. Once a man begins moving, the mind adjusts itself to support that movement. Once a man begins acting, the subconscious rallies its forces behind his direction. Once a man takes even the smallest step, his inner resistance weakens. Motion produces power. Inactivity increases doubt. The man who understands this law uses it to restore his strength whenever discouragement attempts to place its hand upon him. Small advances carry within them a mysterious power. They rebuild confidence. They dissolve hesitation. They remind the man that he is capable, that he is not defeated, that he still possesses command over himself. A single act of effort, even a minor one, can restore a man's dignity when he has nearly lost it. The spirit responds favorably to movement, for it was created not for idleness, but for advancement. When desire falters, discipline must step forward as the guardian of success. It must hold the man steady through the hours when his mind is uncooperative. Discipline is not punishment. It is protection. It shields the man from the influence of temporary discouragement. It keeps him aligned with his purpose when emotion would push him away from it. And it constructs within him a strength far greater than he ever possessed during moments of excitement. Examples of this truth stand throughout history. Thomas Edison did not depend on desire to carry him through thousands of failed experiments. If he had waited for inspiration, he would have achieved little. What carried him forward was discipline, the consistent, methodical action that refused to yield to disappointment. He advanced inch by inch, hour by hour, refining, adjusting, persisting. It was not desire that produced the electric light. It was the stubborn discipline behind the man who created it. Henry Ford built his success through incremental improvements. His breakthroughs came not through sudden flashes of inspiration, but through daily refinement. Each day he tested, adjusted, reworked, and improved. His discipline carved a path where others saw only obstacles. Ford moved steadily toward his aim because he treated each day as a stepping stone, not as a final destination. The world calls it genius, but it was discipline in disguise. Daily progress changes a man's identity. Each act of discipline reinforces the belief that he is capable of directing himself. Each fulfilled task whispers to the subconscious, "I am a man who acts." Gradually, this belief becomes unshakable. A man no longer doubts his ability. He no longer questions his strength. He no longer fears the size of his dream. He has proven to himself through disciplined action that he can be trusted with his own future. Others feel a deep respect for the man who persists silently. They may not understand the full extent of his struggle, but they sense his steadiness. They see him continuing when others would stop. They see him acting when others hesitate. They see him moving forward even when no reward is in sight. Such a man commands admiration because discipline shines more brightly than raw talent. It reveals character. It reveals resolve. It reveals the inner steel of the spirit. There is a profound connection between ordered habits and revived desire. When a man's life is scattered, his desire weakens because his spirit feels the burden of disorder. Chaos exhausts the mind. But when habits are ordered, the mind rests. It moves with clarity. It regains the strength needed to fuel desire. A well-ordered day becomes fertile ground for enthusiasm. Even the simplest routines, kept faithfully, restore the spirit's confidence. Steady action forms spiritual strength that cannot be obtained in any other way. A man who trains himself to move when he does not feel like moving becomes dangerous to failure, for he is no longer ruled by impulse. He is governed by intention. He no longer needs the crutch of motivation, for he has learned to command himself. Such strength is rare, for most men remain slaves to their moods. But the man who conquers his moods conquers his fate. A man must now learn to speak affirmations to support this steady movement. He must say within himself, "I advance because I choose to advance. I act because action strengthens me. I move forward even when desire sleeps. My steps are governed by purpose, not by feeling." These affirmations are not empty sentences. They are the seeds of discipline planted into the soil of the subconscious. Repeated daily, they form the roots that keep the man steady through storms of doubt. There is no weakness in acting without enthusiasm. The weakness lies in waiting for enthusiasm before acting. The man who learns to act in the absence of desire becomes a master of himself. He understands that motion creates its own energy, that action awakens its own desire, and that commitment produces its own confidence. The world cannot defeat such a man because he does not rely on the world to move him. He moves himself. You must understand that no man becomes strong by surrendering to his feelings. He becomes strong by elevating his purpose above his mood. A disciplined man is free, for he is not chained to circumstance. A man ruled by mood is enslaved, for his actions depend on forces outside his control. Discipline frees the man from this slavery. It places the reins of his life back into his own hands. There will be moments in your journey when discipline feels heavy, but these moments are signs of growth, not struggle. When a man lifts a weight just beyond his comfort, he feels the strain, yet this strain is what builds his strength. The same is true in the spiritual realm. Discipline stretches the man, and in stretching him, it prepares him for the greater success that lies ahead. When discipline becomes your daily companion, desire returns, stronger, clearer, and deeper than before. It returns because you have proven yourself worthy of it. It returns because you have created habits that support it. It returns because the spirit responds to movement with renewed enthusiasm. In this hour, you must choose to embrace discipline as the vessel that will carry you through the valleys and up the mountains of your next year. Let discipline become the steady hand that guides your steps. Let it become the structure that holds your vision aloft. Let it become the quiet power that supports your greatest ambitions. Say within yourself, I act steadily. I advance daily. My steps build my future. My discipline shapes my destiny. Repeat this until the words are carved into the deepest part of your being. For the man of discipline cannot be defeated, not by fatigue, not by discouragement, and not by the loss of desire. There comes an hour in every man's life when he must face the most cunning enemy he will ever encounter. Not failure, not poverty, not opposition from the world, but the quiet, creeping force of discouragement. This adversary does not strike with noise or violence. It does not announce itself openly. It moves in shadows, slipping into a man's thought when he is tired, whispering its poison with the tone of reason. And unless the man understands its nature, discouragement can undo in a single day what years of effort have built. Discouragement is not a sign that the man is unfit for his aim. It is a sign that he is nearing a point where his old identity must fall away. Discouragement intensifies when a breakthrough approaches. It pushes hardest when destiny stands closest. It grows strongest when a man's next step will carry him beyond the boundaries of who he has been. This is why the moments before accomplishment often feel like the darkest, heaviest hours of all. A man stands between two lives, the one he has lived and the one he is becoming. And the pressure of that crossing tests him more than failure ever could. The adversary of discouragement works by exploiting the weakness of memory. It reminds the man of every past mistake, every past disappointment, every moment when he fell short. It repeats these scenes until the man begins to doubt not his strength, but his right to succeed. It whispers that progress is slow, that others have passed him, that the work ahead is too heavy, and yet none of these whispers speak truth. They speak fear disguised as truth. This enemy becomes most dangerous when the man is alone with his thoughts. It approaches him in the evening hours when his energy fades and his vision blurs. It comes to him early in the morning when he rises with uncertainty instead of eagerness. It visits him in the quiet moments between tasks, planting seeds of doubt that grow quickly if not identified and uprooted. A man must therefore learn to recognize discouragement's voice, its tone, its timing, its deception, so he may silence it before it gains power. Discouragement intensifies near the threshold of accomplishment because the subconscious feels the pressure of transformation. The old identity senses it is about to lose control, and so it resists. It brings forth doubts, fears, excuses, and memories of past failures. It does not do this to destroy the man, but to test him. For no man can rise into a new life without proving that he is willing to leave the old one behind. Every great transformation requires a death of the former self, and discouragement is the gatekeeper of that death. The man who pushes past it becomes stronger, clearer, more determined. The man who retreats remains trapped within the boundaries he has long outgrown. You must therefore learn to view discouragement not with fear, but with understanding. It is a sign of proximity to greatness. It is the final examination before the next level of life. The invisible war between the old identity and the new one is fought not with swords, but with thoughts. The old identity seeks safety. The new identity seeks growth. The old identity clings to comfort. The new identity demands progress. And discouragement is the battlefield on which these two forces struggle. When you feel the weight of discouragement upon your shoulders, you must realize that you are not losing strength. You are shedding an identity. You are discarding beliefs that no longer serve you. You are preparing to step into a version of yourself that has waited patiently for your arrival. The mind creates resistance whenever destiny draws near. This is one of the laws of spiritual growth. A man cannot step into greatness lightly. He must earn his place by demonstrating endurance. The resistance is not a barrier, but a rite of passage. The man must prove he can remain steady when his emotions betray him. He must demonstrate that his purpose outweighs his mood. And once he passes this test, the resistance falls away, revealing the clear path ahead. Consider Abraham Lincoln. His darkest nights came immediately before his greatest transformations. His failures, his losses, his disappointments, they did not come to break him. They came to strengthen the part of him that would one day carry the fate of a nation. He endured discouragement so profound that lesser men would have retreated permanently. Yet he rose. And because he rose, history remembers him as one of the greatest leaders ever to walk the earth. Discouragement is a universal adversary, but it is also a universal instructor. It teaches a man to stand firm when the ground beneath him shakes. It teaches him to keep his eyes upon his aim, even when the path appears faint. It teaches him to trust the process when results are slow. And it teaches him to rely on discipline rather than emotion, something essential for any man seeking to create a life of greatness. There are methods by which a man can overpower discouragement. The first is to anchor his mind to a single direction. Discouragement thrives in scattered thought. But when a man holds a definite aim in his mind, discouragement loses its influence because the mind is occupied with purpose. The second method is movement. Inaction strengthens discouragement. Action weakens it. A man who takes even the smallest step forward disrupts the inner fog that discouragement creates. The third method is remembrance. A man must remember his past victories. He must recall the moments when he overcame difficulty, when he persisted despite doubt, when he rose after falling. These memories remind him of the strength that still lives within him. Discouragement attempts to make the man forget his power. Remembrance restores it. The fourth method is affirmation. A man must speak to himself with the authority of a commander. He must say within himself, "I am stronger than this doubt. My purpose is greater than this moment. My spirit stands firm." These words, repeated with conviction, awaken courage. The subconscious responds to the tone of certainty, and once certainty returns, discouragement loses its footing. As a man persists through discouragement, he begins to appear extraordinary to others. They cannot see the inner battle he is fighting, but they sense the strength he displays. They admire the steadiness with which he moves. They watch him continue when others would have surrendered. And though they may never say it aloud, they feel drawn to the quiet power that surrounds him. A man who endures discouragement without collapsing earns a transformation of self-respect that no outward achievement can match. He learns that he can trust himself. He learns that he can rely upon his own spirit even when it falters. He learns that he possesses a reservoir of endurance deeper than he ever imagined, and this knowledge becomes the cornerstone of his future success. The greatest growth a man experiences often comes in the moments when giving in feels easiest. Growth does not come through comfort. Growth does not come through ease. Growth comes through endurance. It comes when the man decides to continue despite the weight of discouragement pressing upon him. It comes when he refuses to surrender his direction to the voice of doubt. In these moments, a man must speak affirmations that silence the voice of discouragement. He must say, "I continue, I persist, I rise. My strength is deeper than my fear. My spirit is stronger than my doubt. I walk forward even when desire sleeps. I will not break." These sentences, repeated daily, fill the subconscious with the energy needed to overpower the adversary within. Discouragement is not a verdict. It is a test. And you are not being tested for punishment. You are being tested for elevation. The man who endures discouragement becomes worthy of the success he seeks. The man who collapses under it remains unprepared for the responsibilities of greatness. You stand now in the midst of this inner battle, and though the pressure feels great, you must hold firm. Discouragement is the last gate between you and the life you have long desired. If you stand your ground, the gate will open. There comes a moment in every man's journey when he must confront a truth that many never learn: the difference between rest and retreat. Rest is the pause that strengthens, retreat is the surrender that weakens. One restores a man's spirit, the other drains it. Yet when weariness presses heavily upon his mind, the line between the two becomes blurred, and he risks mistaking temporary fatigue for permanent defeat. The man who learns to rise after weariness without shame and without hesitation discovers a power that separates him from the multitude who remain bound by discouragement. Weariness is not a sign that a man has reached his limits. It is a sign that he has stretched beyond the old boundaries of comfort. The spirit becomes weary, not because it is failing, but because it is expanding. This is why a man feels the weight of fatigue precisely at the moment when he is outgrowing his former self. Growth demands strength, strength demands exertion, exertion produces weariness, but weariness is never the end. It is the midpoint. It is the threshold between the man you were and the man you seek to become. Yet many men collapse at this threshold, believing that weariness signals defeat. They do not understand that nature often withdraws desire from a man to force him to develop another kind of power, the power to rise without enthusiasm. A man who can rise only when he feels strong will never rise far, but the man who rises when he feels weak, who stands when he feels unsteady, who advances when he feels uncertain, this man discovers the deeper reserves of his spirit. Renewal is not a passive occurrence. A man does not wake one morning with sudden strength unless he has commanded that strength through deliberate action. Renewal is a conscious act. It begins the moment he tells himself, I will rise. I will continue. I will not let weariness define my direction. The subconscious responds to command more rapidly than it responds to emotion. A tired man who issues a firm command awakens more power than a rested man who hesitates. Consider the great men whose names have become woven into the tapestry of achievement. Thomas Edison faced weariness more times than any man could count. Year after year, he endured failure, uncertainty, and repeated setbacks. His experiments exhausted his body, drained his finances, and tested his resolve. Yet every time weariness struck, he rose, not with excitement, but with discipline. It was not strength that carried him through. It was the law of rising after weariness. He understood that the man who rests without retreating advances even while sitting still, for he has preserved his direction. Abraham Lincoln, too, knew seasons when his heart felt heavy, when his mind felt stretched beyond human endurance, when public criticism and private sorrow threatened to bury him beneath their weight. Yet each time weariness threatened to break him, he rose, not by denying the exhaustion, but by refusing to surrender to it. His rise after weariness became the measure of his character. It prepared him for responsibilities that would have crushed a lesser man. A man must learn to treat weariness as temporary. When he views it as a fixed state, he loses morale. But when he sees it as a passing storm, he maintains direction. Every man experiences weariness. Few learn to rise above it. The ones who do rise develop an inner dignity that cannot be taught by success alone. Weariness humbles the man, but rising humbles his fears. Weariness tests the man, but rising confirms his worth. Weariness reveals his humanity, but rising reveals his greatness. Others gain confidence in the man who rises repeatedly. They observe his steadiness. They see his refusal to yield. They watch him stand after each fall, strengthen after each setback, and continue after each disappointment. Such a man earns trust without asking for it. Those around him feel safe in his presence because he has proven that he does not break under pressure. His reliability becomes evident, and reliability is one of the highest forms of strength. This confidence is not merely external. It grows within the man as well. Each time he rises after weariness, he expands his belief in his own endurance. He learns that the spirit recovers more quickly than the mind expects. He learns that strength often returns the moment he begins to move. He learns that his fears of collapse were illusions born of fatigue. Rising after weariness replaces fear with certainty, and certainty with mastery. The identity shift that occurs when a man rises after weariness is profound. He no longer sees himself as a victim of circumstance. He sees himself as the commander of his condition. He no longer waits for enthusiasm. He generates it. He no longer fears discouragement. He uses it as a signal to rise again. He develops the quiet pride of a man who knows that nothing can break him permanently. Even when he bends with the knowledge that he will straighten again. A man's spirit strengthens when commanded to rise. The subconscious does not argue with firmness, it yields to it. A man who says within himself, "I rise now," awakens hidden reserves. His mind summons energy from sources he cannot see. His body responds with renewed vigor. His heart steadies itself. His will sharpens. Rising is not merely a physical act. It is a spiritual order issued from the depths of one's character. Weariness becomes dangerous only when a man fears it. When he accepts it as part of the journey, he removes its sting. Just as a traveler on a long road expects moments of fatigue, the man pursuing a great purpose must expect moments of spiritual heaviness. There is nothing unusual about it. There is nothing shameful in it. It is simply the natural stretching required for advancement. This is why you must now embrace the law of rising after weariness. You must practice it until it becomes instinct. When your energy fades, rise. When your heart hesitates, rise. When your desire falls silent, rise. You must train your spirit to move independently of feeling. This practice alone will place you above 99 out of 100 men, for most men wait for ideal conditions that never arrive. You must speak to yourself with clarity. Say within your mind, "My weariness is temporary, my direction is permanent. I rise because my purpose requires it. I rise because I am stronger than this moment. I rise because I have decided to rise." Repeat this until your subconscious accepts it as law. You must also understand that rest is not the enemy. Rest, when chosen consciously, strengthens a man's power, but rest taken as retreat weakens it. The difference lies not in the body's stillness, but in the mind's intention. If you rest while holding your direction, you remain in the process of advancement. If you rest while abandoning your direction, you drift backward. A man must learn to rest without letting go of his purpose. He must learn to pause without losing his momentum. He must learn to step back for renewal without stepping away from his path. When he rests with intention, his inner strength gathers. When he rests without intention, his inner strength leaks away. You may have felt moments in your life when weariness convinced you to step back permanently. But now you understand that weariness was not a signal to stop. It was a signal to prepare. It was the final effort of the old self to keep you small. The spirit does not grow without resistance. The mind does not strengthen without weight. The heart does not expand without pressure. You are not being defeated. You are being forged. Think of Edison once more. His greatest breakthroughs came after moments of deepest weariness. He did not flee from those moments. He met them, he rose. And through rising, he gained insights that a rested mind could not have provided. Weariness forced him to approach problems differently. It forced him to refine his methods. It forced him to stretch his imagination. Weariness became the chisel that shaped his genius. Think of Lincoln again. His weariness became the silent teacher that strengthened his resolve. The seasons when his heart felt broken were the seasons that prepared him for leadership. Without those nights of despair, he would not have possessed the iron steadiness required to guide a nation through turmoil. Weariness carved depth into his character. Your weariness is carving depth into yours. This is why the law of rising after weariness is one of the greatest spiritual laws of human progress. It separates the man who merely survives from the man who conquers. It separates the man who hopes from the man who decides. It separates the man who drifts from the man who commands. There is a moment, subtle, quiet, often unnoticed, when the man decides to rise. It is the moment when he shifts from being acted upon to acting, from enduring to advancing, from hoping to commanding. This decision marks the turning point of his entire life. And now the moment has come for you to make that decision. You must stand inwardly. You must rise spiritually. You must declare with firmness, I rise now. My spirit stands taller than my weariness. I take the next step. I continue my mission. I move forward. These words will rebuild your energy. They will sharpen your mind. They will strengthen your will. They will guide your steps into the next year with clarity and dignity. Repeat them until you feel the shift within you. You are not at the end. You are rising from a temporary descent. Weariness has visited you, but weariness has not defeated you. The man who rises after weariness becomes unstoppable, for he no longer fears difficulty. He has learned that he can fall and rise again. He has learned that he can break and rebuild stronger. He has learned that his spirit obeys him when commanded. He has learned that nothing, absolutely nothing, can make him quit. There comes a decisive hour in every man's life when he must choose consciously and irrevocably whether he will continue or whether he will yield. There is no neutrality in this moment. It is the hour that separates the ordinary from the exceptional, the drifter from the master of his fate, the man who bends to pressure from the man who commands pressure to serve him. To reject surrender is not merely to hold on. It is to rise with a firmness that tells life itself, you will not break me. Surrender becomes seductive in moments of fatigue. The mind begins to whisper that one moment of withdrawal will not matter, that one abandoned task will go unnoticed, that one quiet retreat is permissible after all one has endured. But surrender is never a single act. It is a pattern disguised as relief. It begins with small concessions, then grows into habits, and finally becomes identity. A man must refuse the very first whisper of surrender if he intends to rise to the power he was born to claim. There is a hidden danger in giving in at the edge of breakthrough. Most men imagine that failure strikes early, when the journey has barely begun, but life rarely tests a man when he is still comfortable. The hardest tests come inches before success, at the point when the man has already invested much, endured much, overcome much. It is here, when victory is near but invisible, that surrender becomes most tempting. The mind argues that the effort is too great, the reward too distant, the fatigue too heavy. Yet history shows that the man who yields at this stage abandons treasure that lies just beyond his reach. The final rejection of surrender must therefore be absolute. It must not depend on emotion, for emotions are unstable. It must not depend on outer support, for outer support may vanish. It must not depend on ideal circumstances, for ideal circumstances rarely appear. It must depend on identity, on the firm understanding that you are a man who continues, a man who persists, a man who refuses to be defeated by moments of hardship. Persistence reveals a man's true character. When all is going well, even the weakest appear strong. When enthusiasm is high, even the half-hearted appear determined. When the way is smooth, every man steps forward with confidence. But when adversity arrives, when the path narrows, when the spirit feels thin and the road grows dark, that is when character is exposed. A man who persists without desire reveals a quality of soul that cannot be taught, only chosen. There is a spiritual law that rewards the man who refuses retreat. When a man stands firm, life eventually yields. When he refuses to collapse, the obstacles before him begin to weaken. When he commands himself to continue, even when he does not feel strong, the unseen forces of opportunity begin arranging themselves in his favor. This law has guided every great leader, every innovator, every builder who has left a mark upon the world. They rose not because they possessed gifts unknown to others, but because they refused surrender at the hour when surrender would have seemed reasonable. Consider once more the men whose lives demonstrate this truth with undeniable clarity. John D. Rockefeller faced pressure capable of shattering an ordinary spirit. Financial storms, fierce competitors, shifting markets, public criticism. His path was not smooth, yet he refused to collapse. He stood with the calm steadiness of a man who has decided that nothing external may decide his fate. His refusal to yield created a stability that drew allies to him and strengthened his position in every crisis. Henry Ford endured ridicule, financial strain, accidents, failures, and countless attempts to undermine his purpose. Yet he continued. His refusal to retreat did not come from arrogance. It came from conviction he had chosen his aim. He had declared his identity. And once a man has declared both, he becomes immovable. He bends at times, but he does not break. The world eventually bowed to his persistence, because persistence is a force more powerful than talent. Even Abraham Lincoln, facing conditions that would have brought most men to their knees, refused surrender. His path was marked by repeated defeat long before he ever tasted triumph. Yet his inner refusal to yield strengthened him in a way no success ever could. Each moment he rejected surrender carved deeper lines of leadership into his character. And when his moment of destiny arrived, he stood ready, because he had trained himself to stand in the years before others believed in him. When a man rejects surrender permanently, a new identity forms within him. He begins to see himself as someone who cannot be stopped, not because difficulties vanish, but because difficulties no longer intimidate him. He becomes the man who rises after every blow, the man who continues after every setback, the man who stands when others fall. This identity is not built in easy hours. It is built in the moments when he wants to collapse and does not. Others begin to trust, admire, and follow such a man, even if they never say so aloud. They feel his steadiness. They sense his courage. They recognize that his actions are not governed by his moods, but by his decisions. A man who refuses surrender becomes a source of strength for those around him. His presence inspires others to rise. His silence speaks more clearly than the loud declarations of lesser men. His endurance becomes a beacon for those still struggling in their own battles. There is a transformation others witness when you continue without desire. They see the shift in your face, in your posture, in your way of moving. They see that you no longer tremble before uncertainty. They see that you have become harder to discourage, harder to intimidate, harder to sway. They see that you have acquired something rare, the ability to act without waiting for favorable winds. Such a man becomes unstoppable, because nothing within him or outside him holds the power to halt his direction. But the greatest transformation occurs within you. When you refuse to surrender, the sense of personal power that rises within your heart is unlike anything you have ever known. It is the moment when you realize that you govern yourself, not emotion, not circumstance, not fatigue, not doubt. When you choose to continue despite every impulse to stop, you awaken the deepest reservoir of strength a man possesses. This strength is silent. It does not shout. It does not boast. It stands. It stands in the face of discouragement. It stands in the face of uncertainty. It stands in the face of exhaustion. It stands in the face of fear. It stands in the face of pressure. It stands in the face of delay. And because it stands, the man becomes unbreakable. You must therefore give yourself the final command, the command that removes surrender as an option from your life. You must say within yourself with firmness, I do not yield. I do not retreat. I do not collapse at the edge of breakthrough. I fight the last inch. I continue the final hour. I rise when I feel weak. I advance when I feel doubtful. I complete what I begin. Repeat these words until they become the very foundation of your being. The rejection of surrender is not merely a decision. It is a transformation of identity. It is the birth of a new kind of strength. a strength that carries you through the darkest nights and into the brightest days. Once you reject surrender permanently, life itself begins to reshape around you. Opportunities come closer. People treat you differently. Your own mind begins to trust you, and with that trust comes a new level of clarity, conviction, and direction. Stand firm, stand calm, stand steady, stand as the man who cannot be broken, stand as the man who does not yield, stand as the man who commands his destiny. Your journey has brought you to this hour, so that you may choose what sort of man you will be. And now you must choose, fully, decisively, irrevocably. Reject surrender, and rise into the life that has waited for you all along.